And we're now streaming live.
And it's setting up. I'll let you know as soon as it's done.
On our screen, it says webinar is now streaming on YouTube.
Yeah, it'll say it on there.
Okay.
But I need to see it on this screen.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I see it on mine too.
Yeah, it's mine too.
And I show one attendee. It's a name I don't recognize, so I don't know if it's any of the board members.
Ask who it is.
YUIOP 789.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
We
don't
do
know
have
who
a
that is.
quorum now.
Yes. Just waiting for confirmation from Maria that we're streaming.
It shows on my screen that we are. It says live on YouTube.
Yes, it says that on mine as well.
What,
Yeah, but
what YouTube account is it supposed to be streaming to?
the city of Rochester.
So somebody just pull up the city of Rochester and see if you can see it. I'll look now.
Okay, thank you.
Because on my other screen, it keeps telling me it's timing out, but it's showing it's recording.
Okay, yeah, mine, yeah, all the others, I believe, say live at this point.
Oh, that was Jim.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it on, unless I'm on the wrong site. I'm not seeing it on live on the city.
No, it keeps telling me my connection has timed out. It keeps trying to get through.
Gotcha.
Interesting, but it does say very clearly here that it's live.
You are live. We can see
Okay.
it.
You can see it now?
Okay,
Okay.
Yes.
okay, excellent. Then we will begin.
Yes, really.
We do have a quorum, so I'd like to call the meeting to order. And it looks like 12:06 on my clock here. So thanks everybody for joining. We will obviously continue this way of meeting until such time that we're able to be back in our normal form. But we appreciate your attendance and your ability to adapt to the new technology as it gives us our new challenges and solves some of the old ones. So we'll start with the approval of minutes. Everyone should have received the draft minutes. Thank you very much for having those minutes sent out, Maria. Having had an opportunity to review the minutes, is there a motion to approve?
I move.
Okay, thank you. Sergio moved and Tom Argus
Second.
seconded the approval of the minutes. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to be noted? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. We have a couple of esteemed colleagues here with us today, Dr. Lomax Campbell and Kate Washington. Lomax from the Office of Community Wealth Building and Kate from Own Rochester, who are going to talk to us along with our CEO about Revitalize Rochester.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to keep this kicked off today. Previously, I sent you out a document explaining the different components of the Revitalize Rochester Fund. Real quickly, how we got here. Last year, sometime, Henry Fitz, Thad Schofield, Dana, and myself worked on, with direction from the mayor, worked on a grant to submit to Empire State Development to revitalize our corridors, our commercial corridors. At the same time, we were conducting a commercial corridor study, which you can find in on the city's website. The goal of this program was just, how do we revitalize our corridors and make them vibrant? How do we make them vibrant like some of our other corridors in the city, Park Ave or East Ave, or some of the other corridors in other places in the country? So wrote the grant, and to be honest, we weren't sure we were going to get this, but we did receive the money. Money came from the URI pot of funds that was allocated by Empire State a few years ago. We were awarded in late 2019, and if anyone on this call has worked with the state, it takes a very long time to get to a contract. Contract has to go to Albany, has to go to New York City for sign off. So this is where we are now. Then as we were preparing to launch, we had COVID and things got put on hold. But I want to go through this very briefly. And then Kate Washington, which is, she's a part of this grant and loan fund, and Lomax Campbell, they will do a brief presentation on their areas that they will be managing. So these are some of the goals of the program. Increase investment in neighborhood commercial corridors, build a larger pipeline of qualified businesses, which you'll hear again, enhance small business technical assistance, and build stronger ongoing partnerships with banks. The next slide you see, we haven't uploaded anything, this is all in your packet, but the Revitalization Fund has different components. So we have a relationship with 7 different banks, which I'll mention later. They will provide up to $3.15 million in pre-development loans. Pre-development will cover architectural design, demolition, or anything else we consider pre-development. Could be some marketing, could be some community outreach that can be covered. The $10 million ESD grant fund, $5 million of those dollars will go to building renovation and business grants, particularly used for working capital, as well as redevelopment. 1.5 million will go to entrepreneurship services, which Lomax will talk about. Another 1.5 million will go to worker co-op in the form of loans. 2 million of those dollars need to be allocated to streetscape and placemaking improvements along the corridors. A time frame for this grant and loan project is 5 years. That's how long we have to administer these funds in the community. I won't go into that depth of the mechanics, but we received a $2 million deposit up front. We have to spend 75% of the dollars before we are allocated another installment from the state. We have 30% MWBE goals. That's minority women business entrepreneur goals. And we have local matching requirements that can be matched by loans, also in-kind services, and any investment made by a project. So the partners we have here that will be providing the loan funds, the access to loan funds we have is Canandaigua Bank, Citizens Bank, 5 Star, Genesee Regional Bank, the Housing Partnership, Key Bank, M&T, and Upstate Bank. That is my brief presentation. At this time, I will bring on Lomax Campbell, and he will talk about the entrepreneurship ecosystem portion of this grant.
All right, thank you, Bea, and good afternoon, everybody. It's humbling to be in the room with you all, the virtual space, and share this
exciting announcement about this new joint program we're looking at launching together. If I can share my screen here, I'll pull up a few slides. And I've been asked to keep our conversation, or at least my portion of it, to 10 minutes. So I'm going to time myself here, starting now. All right, so here's our deck for the day. We're talking about the Resource Partner Enhancement Program. So here's an overview of this public-private partnership. So first we'll begin with the gist. This is a new cohort-based program funded by the RRF, where we're trying to really make the whole ecosystem that's currently under construction stronger. And so that all of the organizations that serve entrepreneurs in our area can better meet them where they are and help them achieve their goals. And by doing this, this increases the funnel, the front end of the funnel of organizations that come to REDCO and also other funding institutions, but particularly in this context, REDCO, that gets to yes when it comes to applications for loans and grants, particularly for those populations or facets of our populations who've not necessarily had the same access in prior decades to the resources that REDCO oversees. We're looking to also identify preferred referral partners across the network of entrepreneur serving organizations. And we've outlined a few milestones here that you've all, if you've already received these slides, you'd also see them. We can go a little further into it, but you can see them here in terms of what we're doing to prepare for launch and then kind of activities throughout. And so I've also prepared some talking points for Bea and whoever else goes out and talk intelligently about this work to show that 5 different resource partners or business serving institutions will receive over the course of 2 years about $200,000. And it's to really give them the capital to experiment with expanding and enhancing their service provision, but also so that they can make sure they have the right size team for their work. There would also be coaches who would be assigned to them, who would work with them over that 24-month period, and they'd also receive $100,000 from the 1.5 million allocation of the fund as a way to keep them engaged in the process. And they're going to be providing both coaching and technical assistance services. Resource partners will both work on their own for their own institution's improvement, but also work as a cluster or cohort to begin to address a end-to-end issue or growth problem that small businesses face. And of course, my office, the Mayor's Office of Community Wealth Building and REDCO, would oversee the selection of the coach, the resource partners, kind of provide high-level support in a series of meetings throughout the course of the 24 months, and then manage the disbursements of the funds.
Lomax, I'm sorry, before you go, could you just drop back to the previous slide for 1 second? So are these 5 resource partners sharing the 200,000, or is it 200,000 each for each?
Each
Okay,
one
so,
will receive $200,000.
okay, and the same with the coaches. Each coach receives 100,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. And so it's a public-private partnership between our organizations as well as the resource partners and those coaches who provide these services. And these efforts complement adjacent efforts such as the building of Nexus I-90, which is our entrepreneurial ecosystem suite of solutions, as well as some of our integrated marketing efforts to showcase and promote women and minority-owned businesses. So it's not a standalone solution or a standalone program. And so I mentioned some of these goals in the gist, but just to reiterate, we're trying to strengthen the overall ecosystem that's currently being built. We're trying to create capacity building for those organizations who've been doing services for small businesses for years. And we're trying to identify who are the regular go-tos as REDCO engages in other activities to do the economic development work that it's doing. But more importantly, we're also, not more importantly, but in addition, we're going to be increasing the cultural competence of the coaches who will be also preferred coaches and technical assistance providers that we can also refer folks to, because they're also going to be a cohort receiving training and support as they work with the resource partners. And so we're modeling inclusive procurement and also community wealth building principles through this effort. So here are some of the things that are going to actually happen. Once the cohort is named and the coaches are hired, Some of the things that they're going to do is they're going to actually interview the senior leadership of those resource partners, as well as the program staff of the business programs that they have, as well as past program participants. And so this is essentially primary research being done to understand directly from the stakeholders within the organizations and impacted by those organizations, you know, what the dream is or what the aspirations are of the organizations and the people that they serve. But they're also going to do a secondary research assessment of past evaluations and current program participant evaluation, so they can say this is what the data shows, in addition to what everyone's wish list is of what their organizations aspire to be. And then they're also going to go through the programs themselves, since they are also small businesses, and they're going to triangulate those different sources of evidence in a report with recommendations to improve the service provision. And when the resource partner takes on the recommendations in that report, this working capital is to assist them in implementing those recommendations. They'll receive the coaching and technical assistance for the duration of the program, and they'll wrap up with a sustainability plan showing how they're going to sustain those improvements. And what's not listed here is there's going to be a pre-assessment and post-assessment of their current state and ability to serve entrepreneurs and small businesses. And we're also looking at having the coaches go through training, racial equity training. There was a 2.5-day workshop that we've been using at the city called Undoing Racism. And it's to help frame a systems of analysis of how structural and systemic barriers work and how these organizations can alleviate those so they can better serve entrepreneurs and small businesses. So we've developed something called a hand model to begin to articulate what the enhancement effort looks like. Just like any hand, and I'm holding my hand up intentionally, each finger represents a business serving institution that has some competency or some program to work on. But when they pull together, they should work as a cluster or peer learning group to solve an end-to-end problem. And so the example you see here is Venture Job Foundation is an example of a nonprofit business serving organization who's maybe interested in improving their funding readiness process. So the businesses that come into their Jobs Kitchen Accelerator, they want to make sure that once they've gone through that accelerator, they're really ready to receive funding from them. Similarly, Urban League holds the state contract for women and minority-owned business certification. And so they may say, we want to make that electronic so that as you're going through the program, you're completing parts of it. And similarly, RIT Center for Urban Entrepreneurship may decide they want to build an accelerator. Pathstone revamp their business plan series, and Volunteer Legal Services go beyond just forming businesses for low-income people, but also to help with co-op conversions and succession plans for owners of small businesses who've gotten to that sunset age but don't have heirs to their investment. But together, they may say, we're interested in the business startup phase of small business, and this is how we can work collaboratively to address at least 5 different stages or steps in serving small businesses. So think of it as a hand model. And as I prepare to conclude, our next steps are to convert this slide deck to narrative that explains the model, which will become the basis of an RFP or a proposal for business serving institutions to apply to be a part of our first cohort. To take that narrative in this slide deck and further test this program concept with other third parties, just to make sure it has face validity, as well as actual capability of meeting the needs and helping organizations grow. We want to use word of mouth as a strategy to identify coaches so that we can get to the grassroots of who's out there providing those services, prepare the program announcement, and so on and so forth. And then literally, as the cohorts kick off, they're going to build their timelines, deliverables, and milestones because it needs to be contextually fitted to their organization in context of who they serve, not a universal one-size-fits-all approach, even though there's a broader structure of support for the initiative. And Bea mentioned he wanted us to try to shoot for a 30 to 60-day window for promotion so that we can have the best pool of possible candidates for selection. And then we try to launch the cohort this fall, sometime between late September to mid-October, ideally. So that's pretty much all I have, and about 15 seconds to spare.
Thank
Open
you,
to questions.
Lomax. Good job. Sergio? You're muted, Sergio. Sorry.
Thank you, Lomax, for the presentation. So this program, and the funding that you have described, this is to provide this infrastructure of support. So these that they may come up are start and executed the right way, and then they have a better chance to succeed. That's
Absolutely.
now, there's another part of money or other places where the money will come from for the projects themselves, but in your case, it's providing the infrastructure and support for that, right?
So
Yes.
as Bea mentioned earlier, $1.5 million of the RRF is allocated to building or enhancing the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so this allows us to systematically operationalize that $1.5 million.
Yeah.
On top of that, the RRF guidelines also specify that resource partners will need to contribute 10% of what they're receiving. And so that would also give them skin in the game.
Okay. And once you have the team in place that you are selecting, and probably that will be enrolled in the fall, obviously, then I imagine is a function of this group also to market and reach out to the community to make them aware of this exists, where they can get assistance and guidance. Is that the case?
Absolutely, absolutely. Part of our idea of providing structural support is we will pull all cohort members and coaches together with our team on a quarterly basis to just see what their progress looks like. And then halfway through the 2-year program, we'd do like a year 1 wrap up, we'd start with a big kickoff event and we'd do a wrap up event at the end of 24 months. Those would be visual to the public and would help sustain the effort.
Well, thank you.
Any
Okay.
questions?
Dana,
Yes.
I just want to make a statement real quick, or a comment. I just wanted to say, nice presentation, Dr. Lomax and Ms. Washington. I want to say that one of the things that was attractive to me was the fact that you're looking at minority businesses that all of them aren't certified in WBE. So I think that's great because a lot of our minority businesses, unfortunately, do not have the NWBE or certification. So I'm glad to see that that's not going to eliminate them from taking part in this program. I think that's great.
Okay, thank you, Willie. Tom had his hand up. Tom, you're muted. Tom?
Yeah, I know.
There you go. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, the issue for me is the broader picture here of when you talk about the economic development ecosystem, which is a new term around that a lot of people are using. I'm trying to figure out the specific role of REDCO within this, at least within the Rochester Redevelopment Fund. To what degree is this board responsible for money that comes to REDCO? Is REDCO the one that's driving the Rochester Redevelopment Fund, or is there some other entity that is really driving it? We're a partner in it, but somebody else is overseeing it and supervising it and evaluating it.
No, I'll answer that question. REDCO is responsible for all of the funding. And we particularly be responsible for all the building renovation, whether it's working capital grants inside the corridor. So we are the driver or the facilitator, the administrator of the funds. I mean, ultimately, we're responsible. The board's role, which I failed to mention. So the document that I sent out earlier, not this presentation, but earlier, I think last month, there is a committee represented by the banks, the 7 different banks, 2 representatives from REDCO, the board, and 1 representative from Empire State Development. As we bring projects to that board, They vet it, we present it. If they vote to approve, then it goes to the full REDCO board for approval or denial. In that first step, though, one of the things that the state was insisting about is the state has overriding authority. So if it's in the initial board and the state representative doesn't agree with it, it won't come to the full REDCO board. Under the OWN, which I want to get her on, Kate, because I know we're dealing with time. Kate has a review committee, a loan committee that was approved by the state. They review it. If they approve it, it comes to the full REDCO board. Again, with that committee, there's one representative from Empire State Development. So the contract with Empire State is with REDCO. We're ultimately responsible and have to keep eyes on it, and we're responsible for the disbursement of the funds. But you have two other entities that play a role in making sure this thing works. And with that, I'd like to bring Kate Washington on. She's the CEO of Owner Worker Network.
Thank you. And I'm going to share the screen for just a moment so I can present to you our presentation as well. Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank all of you for the time, the opportunity to present. One of the things that I like to share about Own Rochester is that it was originally, of course, a city program that actually transitioned to an organization as its own separate entity. And what we do is we have launched businesses to help create opportunities for worker ownership. And the reason we do that, obviously, is because worker ownership provides access to assets and equity that, in particular, low-income workers would not necessarily have access to without the opportunity for ownership. I think everybody on this board is probably well aware of the challenges of business ownership, especially startups, and the success and failure rates of those. So we try to facilitate that by creating an opportunity to be an incubator that allows businesses to grow and then to convert to worker ownership. And as you'll hear a little bit later in our presentation, we'll talk a little bit about our focus on conversion, because we believe that that's really important. So our mission, of course, has been to create jobs and wealth building opportunities for low income residents in the city of Rochester by creating worker-owned businesses. And in those businesses, obviously the workers don't have access to a job, but they have access to owning the business as well. So we believe in the power of ownership because we believe that the workers are not only committed to the work, but they're also committed to their own personal advancement. They gain assets that they can pass down to their families by getting ownership of stock in the business. And it also improves the opportunities in neighborhoods where there's worker-owned businesses to build community. When people are aware that the workers who are in the businesses actually own the business as well, the neighborhoods also take care of those businesses as well. So we want to continue to create that opportunity. And just to give you some idea about what we've done so far, obviously we've been engaged in fundraising, which is very important. Own Rochester is a not-for-profit 501c3 entity, which allows us to raise funds. We take the funds and we invest those in the businesses. We actually created we had two startups. One was Enhancement LLC, which we actually are in the process of closing because we don't feel like that's a business that can be sustainable. However, our Enhancement Custodial is a business that's been launched. It's actually grown. We actually secured diversified customer base through contracts with what we consider to be local anchor institutions. And those are local institutions that are deeply embedded in the community, usually educational institutions, medical facilities. And that's where we've been developing our work so far. We have a plan right now to convert a business and actually to buy and expand a business, and also to launch and grow a worker-owned business that focuses on childcare for people who are working non-traditional hours as well. So as I mentioned, our focus right now is not on launching more startups, but to actually help businesses that are currently in business to convert. I can talk a little bit about the conversion process a little bit later. So we have some growth opportunities through purchase and expansion and also through conversion. So one of the things that we know right now, and particularly during the pandemic, something that has occurred really without anybody's knowledge, is that many businesses and many business owners, particularly in New York State and around the country, are owned by owners who are seniors who are looking to retire. And in many cases, those businesses will probably either close, or if the business owner is able to sell that business, then you can have a successful sale to another owner. A lot of the people, a lot of the workers in those businesses are not necessarily going to be sustained in that business, because when a person sells a business, the workers don't always go with it. We see a tremendous opportunity there. And our goal is to help convert some of those businesses into worker-owned businesses by using what we consider to be a leveraged buyout of those businesses, purchasing the business and converting the businesses to the workers who were originally the ones who actually grew the business to begin with. So that's part of what we plan on doing with our portion of the Rochester Revitalization Fund. So we know that in 2014, the value of employee-owned assets was about 92,000 or 1.3 trillion, but 92,000 per employee. That is changing. The extension and the growth of worker-owned businesses is really something that we see through the pandemic as a sustainable means for economic growth that creates opportunities that did not exist prior to that. So we're really looking to take deep advantage of this opportunity for us in order to take access to businesses. We actually have 2 businesses that we're in the process of looking at and converting right now. And we also see that possibility for other businesses that may not be sustainable after sort of the economic pandemic that we've been facing. So we see this as an opportunity for us to take access to businesses and create access to wealth for local residents and workers. So give you an example, one of the things that we're doing right now is we have access to a local business that we will be merging with a business that we have existing right now. And that allow us to expand our workers and the worker ownership from 8 employees to 83 employees, which I think is something that's really substantial, because it's a process that we can replicate over and over again and create access to more worker-owned businesses in our community. The other option we have is the access of a childcare, which of course will allow us to be able to convert a portion of a business that's currently existing into a non-traditional care hour business. And we have that in front of us right now. And down the line, we also have access to conversion of a local laundry business that's currently serving the local medical community. And there's a cooperative that exists right now between all of the local hospitals and nursing homes that are currently doing business with that business. And we see an opportunity to actually purchase and convert that business as well. So our current portfolio, as I mentioned, we have a local commercial custodial business that we look to expand from 8 to 83. The company actually has 12% revenue growth and be able to average a 7% net profit with that business. And we also have contracts that will come along with that business that expand not only throughout our local community, but also throughout the state. We're also looking at working with Rochester Refugee Resettlement Company, which also has a local business that we believe we can help convert to a worker-owned business. They have been very interested and we can help them with the financing of that. And as I mentioned already, the child care as well. So what that looks like for us is that we currently, our own Rochester Board of Directors supports the staff, which right now is me, and the 2 businesses that we are looking to, that we currently have in place. And we're looking to actually launch what we call an ESOP structure. And if you're familiar with that, it's an employee stock ownership plan that allows the workers to have access to the stock in all of the businesses. And they will actually have access to that stock as long as they continue to work for the company. That stock will provide additional revenue for those workers and their families and allow them to be able to have resources at their disposal. And we think that that's extremely important, particularly in the climate that we're engaged in right now, where really in our country across the board, about 7% of low-income workers even have access to stock, as compared to what I would consider 30% in high-income earners and about 20% in middle-class worker owners. So this provides access to assets that low-income workers have not previously had access to in the past, and we are able to create opportunities for them to retire, to pass on funds to their families based on having an ESOP ownership of the stock in the companies that they work for. So how does it work for us? Obviously, we are collaborating with REDCO, we're collaborating with ESD, and of course, cooperation is very much at the core of what we do. And all workers who are engaged in a worker-owned business actually subscribe to these philosophies. And that is, first of all, that they voluntarily participate. Nobody is forced to. All the workers voluntarily decide that they want to become a part of a worker-owned company. There's often engagement in the democratic process of those businesses. In some cases, the workers are actually represented on the boards of the organization so that they make decisions about how the resources are used and how they generate the resources. There's definitely autonomy and independence that they have in those businesses, and there's ongoing training, education, and development of their skills in order to be able to participate in the democratic process as well. And they also have a deep concern for their local communities, and they really intend to maintain the worker ownership structure in order to continue to build their local communities. So in our case, we're looking to partner with REDCO. I think Bea gave a brief description of how it works. Is we have in our organization a business development committee that provides oversight for all the business opportunities that we are presented with. But that development committee will actually expand its scope to actually be a part of a committee that reviews any requests for funding for any worker ownership conversions that come through. So they will review that. And the committee members here right now are Gary Rogers, who's currently president of Dock Hardware. We've got David Grum, who is currently now at GRE. Carl Tejan, who's vice president of purchase and supply at the University Medical Center. Jeannie Smith, Melissa Marquez from Genesee Co-op, and Christine Whitman and Ann Liss round it out. And we also will be working with Mitch Jones, who's going to be our underwriter, and our legal counsel is Kirkland and Ellis out of New York City. So they will make up our committee that actually reviews all of the proposals that come to us for any funding that we would look for conversion. Once that happens, they will review any proposals that come to our attention. They will review the financials, they will make a decision, and any recommendation that they make for any business that looks to convert, we will be engaged in the conversion process, and we will help them to convert the business. And once there is an approval, they'll be referred to REDCO, and the REDCO committee, all of you will review and decide upon whether the funding is expended to that particular business for conversion purposes. Obviously, there are experiences that both REDCO and OWN brings. We bring obviously the expertise in worker-owned businesses. We also have financial services at our disposal, and we have access to the supply chain that helps to really fund some of the businesses that we're looking at. And of course, REDCO brings extensive experience to the review process as well. So we view the partnership between OWN and REDCO as essential to ensure that we have an opportunity to really create and sustain these types of worker-owned businesses. So that's the end of our presentation. We have actually a lot of work that we've done on this, and you probably do have some questions.
Okay, are there questions from anybody on the call? Okay, Kate, you did too good a job, apparently. So.
All right, well, thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on. We have only about 15 minutes left, and we still have several agenda items, so we'll try to apologize in advance for if it appears that we're rushing. Keith, we have an opportunity for a brief finance report.
Yeah, so we'll make it brief. I think Maria was yesterday sent out the beginnings of our package that we'll work on. Maria and I will be meeting with Fried Maxick early next week, so we can again establish our starting point and put together the monthly package. I did ask Maria to send out a glossary of the loans and grants, just so people have an idea of what some of the balance sheet items look to and fund, and that should be helpful. But I think maybe tying into Tom's earlier question, I think, maybe spending more time on something like that and making sure we all understand how this all kind of works through our balance sheet, I think would be helpful.
All right, so we could certainly set an agenda item for the next meeting and perhaps allocate a little more time to just go through that so that there's a clear understanding if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I'd like to work with you and Bea to see when we can pull off something that's comprehensive. Next one might be quick, and we do have a budget looming, so there's a lot going on, but
Okay.
we'll work through that, and that might be my last pitch. And well, I did make a note. One of the challenges that we're having, I mean, we kind of know what we want to get to, but we're trying to establish REDCO as an independent set of books with QuickBooks and bringing Fried Maxick over. Some of the reporting still is done through, if I got it right, Maria, it's a system called Munis. So we're trying not to have a lot of manual work, but we'll have to do what we have to do to make sure our board is informed on the financial position. So maybe that's just an asterisk that I thought was worthy of putting out there, that it's not as easy as it looks, but I think we've made some progress and we'll continue to make progress towards that. But Dana, I think I will take you up on that offer. Whether we can be ready by next board meeting, that's what we'll work to do.
Okay, yeah, and it doesn't have to be next board meeting, actually, because we've not yet finished a couple of other things, specifically the bylaws and the strategic plan, and we're still short membership. It might make sense to hold that off, for another meeting or so, but just as a thing that we should be working on, that would be helpful. So thanks for that.
Yep, and then either by volunteer or by tapping on shoulders, we might start to look for a committee, a finance committee that we will, it just might land on somebody's desk. I asked for an inventory of where everybody's at and what the capacity is for existing board members, and then we can also pull in other community volunteers to sit on just a specific finance committee. So
yes,
that's what we're working on. And yep, I do know there's other agenda items. So again, more to come.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Appreciate that. Any questions for Keith before we move on? Okay, so we have two items that are before us this month for grants or loans. The first is funding for the REDCO funding for the public market. So Tracy, I'm assuming you're going to present this?
Yes, Maria sent out a PowerPoint, so if you guys need to take a look at that. Mr. Farr and I started talking about a month ago, probably a little bit longer, about helping out the public market, and the reason why we think that's a good idea. The vendors in the public market itself, they were hit hard by the COVID, so this is almost us helping those who are affected by COVID, especially the small farmers, entrepreneurs, and the businesses. The average number of shoppers has decreased by 40% to 60%. And so what we want to do is be able to help those vendors out by giving them a grant to help with the cost of the vending fees. Originally, the city had waived all of them. They now are just doing like half. So REDCO was going to kick in and do the other half. Jim can speak to that for a little bit, in the essence of time.
Okay.
Before we get too far into that, Jim, let me just, it kind of bleeds into what we're going to be doing later on, but I am the Northeast District City Council member, and I represent the public market, so I'm just disclosing it. I don't think it's a conflict, but I figure I should say it anyway.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Jim, is there anything you'd like to add to what Tracy said?
No, I mean, Tracy summarized it, but we did, with COVID, many of the vendors here, we have about 160 license holders. And so this money would be specifically, we're looking for a way where we could help all of them without doing a number of, small loans or grants to all of them individually. So this money will actually go to the market, but it's going to be all directly applied to a reduction in fees. Throughout the summer, we're actually going to do a 50%. We have done a 50% for June and a 25% for July and August. And then, hoping that in September things will be back and it'll enable them to make it through this tough period.
Okay.
And I think
so just to be clear, Tracy, the grant is going to the public market, not to the individual vendors?
Yes, it's going to the public market and help to reduce the licensing fees. The idea is that we can make sure that we have all of the vendors there so that people can get fresh fruit and vegetables that normally can't. So we want to make sure that everyone stays there.
Okay. And I apologize. I should have introduced Jim. I think everybody knows Jim. He's pretty famous, but Jim's our longtime manager of the public market. The public market's over 100 years old. Jim hasn't been there quite that long, but a pretty good portion of that. So thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Okay, any questions about this proposal for funding for the public market?
Dana, this is Keith. I just I think this is fantastic and a great idea. A, is it enough? And B, is there discretion, or are these across the board reductions, or if somebody needs a little more help? I guess, is there enough discretion here to fully execute, knowing again that we're sort of just coming out of it. We'll be entering phase 4 only at the end of this month. Is this enough? I guess it's probably an odd question, but I just want to make sure it is satisfying the needs of the true intent of the program.
Keith, let me chime in real quick. You asked the wrong person that question. Jim is going to say it's not enough. Even if we were to give him $1 million, he would say it's not enough. No, I'm just kidding, but Jim, go ahead.
I mean, I think, that we've noticed, we were very fortunate that the governor declared us an essential business in the beginning here. And just very quickly, I want to give credit to a lot of the vendors and our staff and security and everybody else that was here, throughout the darker days of the pandemic, when really there weren't a lot of answers, and they were all willing to come and, just like the medical workers and others and the folks you see in the grocery store, be able to be here to make sure. And just, so folks know that we are the largest single site market EBT SNAP site in the United States, and we do over $1 million in SNAP business alone at the market. And particularly for that vulnerable population, it was very important that we were open. We are seeing things regain footing now. So, I think, although I'd love to have, as Bea knows, I'm never shy about taking money because we'll find ways to make it work. But there are some other small grant programs that the city and others have that we've made folks aware of, so that if there's individual needs that an individual business has, we're helping folks make those accessible to folks. So I think this will help us. Really, they're very appreciative, and it will help them make it through this tough period.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any other questions? Okay, if not, I would accept a motion to approve resolution number 2020-12, providing funding for the public market. Okay. Okay, I'm not sure. All of these came out at the same time, so I saw Mike and I saw Keith. I wasn't sure who moved it and who seconded it, but for sake of argument, let's say Mike moved it. Okay. You think you seconded it, Mike?
I seconded it, yeah.
Okay, so Keith moved and Mike seconded the approval of resolution 2020-12. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. Thank you. Motion is approved. The second item for funding is East Avenue Dentistry. And this is a grant and a loan.
It's a loan. It's a full loan.
Oh, okay, sorry. It says grant and loan on mine. Okay, go ahead, please.
East Avenue, East Ave Dentistry. I did have a chance to go over to the location and tour the building. He's doing a wonderful job renovating it. A lot of that stuff he's paid for already. I believe you guys have the packet that Maria sent out. So he was hit really bad by COVID. And in order to open back up, he did a lot of renovations, making sure that he built the proper spacing, added room so that he could serve the Rochester community better. Again, in the essence of time, I'll go through this as quickly as possible. He originally had 22 employees. He's going to bring on 10 additional employees, 5 of which will be city residents. The majority of the people that work at East Ave Dentist do live in the city, and he wants to continue to serve the city and grow his business in the city. If you look on page 3 of 7, the total job so far was $706,000. That will be part of his equity injection. He's only looking for $250,000 from us. I do have Mitch, the underwriter, on the phone, so he can talk to it more. But this project is really good for the city. The city does not have a lot of dentists in the city, and he's looking to be a lot more active for the residents of the city. He definitely does not want to leave the city. Mitch, can you unmute him?
Let's see. Is my microphone?
Can you guys hear him? He's on my phone as well. Can you guys hear him? They can hear you, Mitch.
Okay, I'm on your phone.
Correct.
Okay. The company was doing fine up until COVID. They did a major rehab, put a project of about 1.2 million in. If you look at the growth path, the revenues went up every year, and they added new dentists. It was a father and son dentistry business from Irondequoit that moved into the city in the year 2007. The building's it's a nice facility. If you go by it, it's a glassy office building. It's good size. But the thing about the dentistry industry, as it is right now, you see a lot of private equity companies coming in because of the high gross profit margins. So businesses like this, before it happened, were very attractive. The company, which was a PLLC, they made a high pre-tax number before COVID hit, around $1 million. But because of the nature of a partnership accounting, they would pull all the money out and put the money back in as needed, and they left very little capital in the business. The father, who is a master dentist, is transitioning out of the business, and the son Aaron will be the full owner. With that, we will be taking his personal guarantee. But the issue we have with COVID is how soon will he ramp up to his annual revenue pace of about $3 million. That's what he anticipates. With this construction and re-equipping, he thinks that he can be on a pace for $4.5 million per year. My review showed that with the type of they call them operatories, with 12 operatories, he should be able to do $4.5 million. A big issue here around the city, as Tracy said, is that a lot of dentists are old and not that high of a concentration of dentists in Rochester. So they really have a chance to expand. But the issue that we have at hand right now is that how quickly will they ramp up from this COVID situation, because they have to input new measures to make sure that the patients are safe. The dental industry has been relatively hit hard, but now they're starting to come back. There was a recent article in the New York Times saying that that the dentists are now at 77% of where they were before the COVID hit. And so if you have any questions in that regard.
Okay, thank you, Mitch. Appreciate your feedback and comments. Are there any questions about this resolution 2020-13 to approve funding for loan for East Avenue Dental?
Tracy, we provided you some specific comments on the credit presentation. Are you okay with all our comments?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then we'll repair that. We'll, to the extent that it needs a little.
Wait, hold on. I think Mitch has a
I have a
question.
question now.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
In terms of the intercreditor agreement, it might be difficult to get one because of M&T has such a stronger position. I think we can ask, but I don't know if that should be a requirement for that agreement. And another point that was not in the presentation, I think that we should take Key Man Life Insurance.
I'm sorry, you just went away.
He said Key Man Insurance.
Oh, key person insurance.
They said they can get it or they can't get it.
No, I think we should ask for it.
Okay. All right, then we will fix what we think in the credit presentation, may have missed the mark a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on this one? I apologize, we have reached the end of our allotted meeting time. That does not mean we have to stop. It just means that if people have other meetings scheduled, we may start to lose folks. So I'd like to see if we could wrap up this item. I noticed that unfortunately, as I was trying to get through the presentation, there was a conflict of interest resolution also that we need to deal with. So why don't we deal with this first? Any other questions about this? If not, I would accept a motion to approve resolution 2020-13.
Dana,
Okay.
this is, I'll move it, but it does feel like, will it be Tracy or Mitch who will follow up with Tim, who will ultimately follow up with us to let us know that what, if there were negotiations with M&T or the Rosens, what those
that would be me.
What those resulted in. Okay.
I think we should do that before we approve it.
Okay, that's fine. We're asking then that we hold approval of this loan pending some additional information. And once we receive that information, we will bring this item back for a vote. That people are comfortable with that? Okay. All right, so we'll hold this resolution 2020-13. Do we have the opportunity to spend about another 5 minutes here? Unfortunately, I think we will not be able to get the bylaw or the strategic plan update unless we're willing to spend another 15 minutes or so, and I'm not sure what people's schedules are like.
I can send an update by email.
Okay, thank you. So DT will send her update by email. Tom, is there something that you might be able to do by email?
I'll do the same.
Okay, thank you. So then, Bea, we have the conflict of interest resolution 2020-11.
Yeah, that actually is a law item.
Okay.
I know we didn't have a conflict of interest on file for the board. I hope everyone had a chance to look it over. If they had any comments, they can
Yes.
ask the question now or me to the board.
Yeah, I have to click. Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry.
Okay, so the conflict of interest policy, everyone has had a chance to read that, and if they have any questions, please let us know those right now. Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 2020-11 for the conflict of interest policy for REDCO?
Move it.
Okay, moved by Michael, seconded by Sergio. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Please say nay. Okay, the conflict of interest policy stands approved. We will get updates on the bylaws and strategic plan. Just one very quick item under new business. Our CEO and myself were both notified by Holly Budd that she will no longer be able to serve on the board due to the structure of REDCO as it's currently defined, with the connection to the government and not being a freestanding 501c3 as determined. She took the information that we were provided at the last meeting to her counsel. Her counsel reviewed the information and came to the same conclusion that I think we were given at the last meeting, that at this point in time, REDCO is not sufficiently separate as an entity from the city to be a freestanding 501c3, and as such, her board and her role does not allow her to be a member. She did indicate to me when we talked yesterday that should our status change at some point in the future, she would be happy to be considered again as a board member, but at the present time, she cannot. So,
Right. And also Farish cannot provide any support to us for any of our programs or initiatives.
yes, that's correct. Thank you, DT, for
Didn't
making
hear
that
that.
point as well.
I didn't hear that.
DT said that due to for the same reason, Farish is not able to provide any financial support to us directly in terms of their grant making. So,
Dana, I just have to say, I'm similarly concerned like Holly. We need to talk a little bit more, and I don't know where that would be, but this is just not clear in my head. I think this idea of not being sufficiently separate, I don't know what sufficiently separate means. And all of the time and effort to go into this, an open meeting and all that for a not-for-profit just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm hoping that soon somebody can start being very clear about what's going on in terms of us as a board. I'm just not clear anymore. And I don't blame Holly.
okay. Well, thank you for that comment. I think that, we have, looked at this issue. Tim and under Tim's direction, Stephanie provided us with a very straightforward explanation. But, I think the point here is that's where we are, and that's not where we intend to be. So the question is not what would we intend to be. The question is what's the path to get there. And so that's the piece that we need to resolve and make as clear as possible, because our goal is very clearly to be a separate and distinct 501c3 that is not a different structure, 509, a 4, or any other structure that relies on the city for its status. And that does not, that's not something that we can just declare and have it done that way. That is something that requires the IRS to make a determination as to our nonprofit status. So we have to understand exactly what's required to do that, and then we have to make that clear to the board. So, that's certainly something we can work on, and we will.
I think we need to also look at having our own legal counsel to help us on that.
That's certainly an option as well. And
Yeah,
yeah,
that's one of the bylaw changes that we're proposing.
okay. So we will, working with the CEO, we will work toward resolving this. But to your point, Tom, and thank you for raising it. I mean, we can't go a whole lot farther, to use your language in the strategic plan. I mean, we're not really in the not now, but we're not quite in the where we'd like to be. And so we need a path, and we need to be clear about that. Okay, any other comments or questions? If not, I would accept a motion to adjourn. Tom has motioned and Matthew has seconded. Thank you so much for your time today. Apologize for holding you over for 10 extra minutes, but appreciate your hard work on this, and we will resolve some of these issues within the next month or so. Thank you.
I just want to thank Maria and Tracy for getting us online on YouTube. They had to do. I mean, it seems simple and we're on, but it's not that simple. It takes time. So I'd like to thank them for taking the time to. They worked with Bill Schrabacher over at the city, Patrick Flanagan, to make this happen. Thanks, Council Lightfoot, for letting us know where to go. So they made this possible. So thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thanks everyone.